Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to discuss about greatest integer function and other topics on functions and their graphs from the chapter 2 relations and functions class 11 max. You see, we have already discussed about the other functions like identity function, constant function, polynomial function, signum function, etc., modulus function, etc. in our previous video, which will be available in the playlist. So let us see what is the greatest integer function. You see, this function is actually defined from the real number set to real number set, R to R. And the function is defined by f of x, which is equal to x in square brackets, where x belongs to the real number set. Okay, you see, this x in square bracket, that will actually give a value of the greatest integer, which is less than or equal to x. Such a function is called as the greatest integer function. That is, the function which is defined by this equation f of x equals x in square brackets, which gives a value of the greatest integer which is less than or equal to x. Such a function is called as greatest integer function. That is, from the definition of f of x, which is x in square bracket, we can see that for minus 1 less than or equal to x less than 0, the f of x, which is the x in square brackets, that will be equal to minus 1. How? You see, this actually means that x can have values which is less than 0 and greater than or equal to minus 1. Okay, x is, minus 1 is less than or equal to x means x is greater than or equal to minus 1. So, x can have values which is equal to minus 1, greater than minus 1, but less than 0. Okay, so you see, x must be an integer as well, because we are talking about greatest integer function. No, it should be an integer. So, between minus 1 and 0, no other integers are actually present. So, x is less than 0. Less than 0 means the only possible integer is minus 1. Okay, x is greater than minus 1 or equal to minus 1. So, greater than minus 1, less than 0, no other integer is present here. So, equal to minus 1. So, only minus 1 is present here. Okay, that is the value possible here is only minus 1. So, f of x will be equal to minus 1. So, here the greatest integer in this is minus 1. Okay. So, for minus 1 less than or equal to x less than 0, f of x, which is equal to x in square brackets, that will be equal to what? Minus 1. Okay, that is a possible greatest integer here. Now, if you consider 0 less than or equal to x less than 1, for this 0 less than or equal to x less than 1, what about the greatest integer function f of x? You see, x can be equal to 0, greater than 0, but less than 1. X cannot be 1. So, greater than 0 and less than 1 means only 0 is possible, no? So, f of x is equal to 0. For 1 less than or equal to x less than 2, what about f of x? X can be equal to 1, greater than 1, but less than 2. So, only possible value is 1. Because greater than 1 and less than 2, no other integer is present between 1 and 2. So, the only value is 1 because x can be equal to 1. Now, for 2 less than or equal to x less than 3, see, x can be equal to 2, greater than 2, but less than 3. Greater than 2 and less than 3, no other integer is present. So, only 2 is possible. So, f of x is equal to 2. Okay, so this is how we find the greatest integer function. Now, for x is equal to 1, what about the greatest integer function f of x, which is equal to f of 1? That is, in the place of x, we substituted 1. That's all. So, you see, the greatest integer function f of x is defined as the x in square brackets. This actually gives a value of the greatest integer less than or equal to x. So, here our x value is 1. So, this function will give a value which is, value of the greatest integer which is less than or equal to 1. Less than or equal to 1 means x can have one value, value 0, minus 1, minus 2, etc. So among these possible and n values, negative values could be here. So among these possible values, which is the greatest integer? That is 1. Okay, so for x equal to 1, f of x will be 1. Alright, now for x is equal to minus 1, what about f of x, which is f of minus 1? You see, x is equal to minus 1, so the greatest integer function can be less than or equal to minus 1. Less than or equal to minus 1 means it can have a value minus 1. Okay, then less than, so minus 2, minus 3, etc. Okay, so among these possible values, which is the greatest integer, which is minus 1. So when x is equal to minus 1, f of minus 1 is minus 1. Okay, similarly when x is equal to 1.5, what about the greatest integer function f of 1.5? When x is equal to 1.5, the greatest integer function f of 1.5 can have values less than or equal to 1.5. That should be the greatest integer less than or equal to 1.5. So here we have 1.5, which is actually not an integer. So 1.5 cannot be considered. So less than 1.5, the integers are 1, 0, minus 1, minus 2, etc. to this side. So among these, the greatest integer is 1. Okay, similarly, when x is equal to minus 1.5, when x is equal to minus 1.5, what about the greatest integer function? This f of x will be the greatest integer less than or equal to minus 1.5. So you see, minus 1.5 is here, but it is not an integer, so this value cannot be taken. The greatest integer less than or equal to x. Here x is minus 1.5, but it is not an integer, so we cannot consider this value. So less than minus 1.5. Less than minus 1.5 means they can have, it can have values minus 2, because minus 1 is here, no? Between minus 1 and minus 2 we have minus 1.5. So minus 1 cannot be considered. So minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, etc. So among these possible values, which is the greatest integer? Minus 2. So for x is equal to minus 1.5, f of minus 1.5 will be 2. Okay, similarly, for x is equal to 2, what about the greatest integer function f of 2? This will actually give a function, a number, the greatest integer less than or equal to 2. So it can have a value 2 equal to 2 less than 2. So less than 2 means 1, 0, minus 1, minus 2, etc. So the greatest integer is 2. So when x is equal to 2, f of 2 is 2 or f of x is 2. Okay, similarly, when x is equal to minus 2, when x is equal to minus 2, f of minus 2 will be what? The greatest integer less than or equal to minus 2. So it can have a value minus 2 because minus 2 is an integer, less than. So minus 1, minus 3, minus 4 less than, no. So minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 1 will be on this side, right side, minus 5, etc. So the greatest integer is minus 2. So minus 2. When x is equal to 2.5, what about the greatest integer function? That is the greatest integer which is less than or equal to 2.5. You see, it can have a value 2.5 less than or equal to 2.5 means, less than or equal to x means it can have a value of x, but here the x is 2.5, which is not an integer, that cannot be considered. So less than 2.5. So 2, 1, 0, minus 1, etc. So which is the greatest integer? The greatest integer is 2. So 2. Okay. Similarly, if x is equal to minus 2.5. So you see, its greatest integer function f of minus 2.5, that is actually the greatest integer less than or equal to x. So less than or equal to minus 2.5. So you see minus 2.5, which is not an integer, so that cannot be considered. So less than minus 2.5. Less than minus 2.5 means you can have values minus 3, minus 4, minus 5, etc. You cannot consider minus 2. See, don't be confused with this. Less than minus 2.5 means you may think it as minus 2 as well in this. example. But you cannot consider minus 2. Why? Because you see minus 2 will be here, no. Because minus 2.5 is in between minus 3 and minus 2. So it is actually greater than minus 2. We need less than minus 2.5. I mean minus 2 is here, which is greater than minus 2.5. We should consider the values which is less than or equal to x. So equal to this value or less than this value. Equal to this value cannot be considered here because this is not an integer. So here in this case the greatest integer is minus 3. Okay, similarly when x is equal to 3, f of x will be f of 3 will be 3. When x is equal to minus 3, f of x will be minus 3. Okay. Now you see, when you consider x as 0, what about the f of x greatest integer function? That will be f of 0. That will give you the greatest integer which is less than or equal to 0. 0 is an integer that can be considered. Then less than or equal to 0, no? So 0, minus 1, minus 2, etc. So the greatest integer is 0. So when x is equal to 0, f of 0, the greatest integer function is 0. Okay. Now let us see the nature of the graph of the greatest integer function. So far we have been discussed about the f of x values. F of x is actually equal to y, no? So f of x values or y values for different x values, that is actually written here. Now let us just draw the graph. See, this is the origin, positive x-axis, negative x-axis, positive y-axis, negative y-axis. Okay, so we have seen that when x is equal to 0, the f of x, which is the greatest integer function, f of x can also be taken as y, no? So y is equal to 0. F of x is equal to 0 means y is equal to 0. So we will get a point here, 0. When x is equal to 0, y is equal to 0 means origin. Okay, now when x is equal to 1, y value is 1. So when x is equal to 1, y value is 1, we will get a point here. Similarly, when x is equal to 1.5, y value is 1. So 1.5 will be in between 1 and 2. So x is equal to 1.5, we will get y value 1. So we will get a point here. Then when x is equal to 2, y value is 2, not 1. X is equal to 2. When x is equal to 2, y value is 2. So we will get a point here. That means, see, for x is equal to 1, y value will be 1. For x is equal to 1.5, it is 1. Okay, similarly for x is equal to, if you consider x is equal to 1.6, you will get y as 1. X is equal to 1.7, you will get y as 1. That is still 2. At 2, you will have the y value or f of x value as 2. From 1 to 2, you will have the y value as 1, but not at 2. Okay, so from 1 to 2, you will get the y value as 1, but at 2 it is not so, because at 2 its value is 2. So we will draw a line like this. Okay, here we have an open circle that actually indicates that y value is, this actually indicates that when x is equal to 1, y value is 1. From that x is equal to 1 to 2, y value is the same 1, but at 2 it is not so. Okay, that is why an open circle here at 2. Okay. Similarly, you see, when x is equal to 2, y value is 2. So when x is equal to 2, y value is 2. X is equal to 2.5, y value 2. X is equal to 2.5, y value 2. But when x is equal to 3, y value is 3. So when x is equal to 3, y value is 3. So somewhere here. That is, when x is equal to 2, y value will be 2. For x is equal to 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 till 3, you will have the f of x value or y value as 2. So we will get a straight line like this till 3, but x is equal to 3, y value is not 2. So we will draw one open circle like this here. A circle like this here. Okay, that is in this region between 2 and 3, the value of the greatest integer function is 2. But at 3, it becomes 3. So that is why we are putting one circle like this here. Alright. Similarly, when you consider the negative values of x is equal to minus 1, y value, that is f of x which is minus 1. So when x is equal to minus 1, y value that is f of x is minus 1. So we will get a point here. When x is equal to minus 1.5, y value is minus 2. So minus 1.5 means somewhere here, y value will be minus 2. Sorry. This is x, no, this is y. So when x is equal to minus 1.5, somewhere here, y value will be minus 2. So minus 2, we will get a point here. That means, you see, when x is equal to minus 1, y value will be minus 1. For x is equal to minus 0.9, minus 0.8, minus 0.6 till 0, you will have the y value as minus 1. But at 0, y value is 0. So not at 0. So we will put a circle here. Okay. Similarly, when x is equal to minus 1.5, y value is 2. So 2. Minus 2. Okay. Similarly, when x is equal to minus 2, y value is minus 2. So minus 2, we will get a point here. So from minus 2 to minus 1 in this region, the y value will be minus 2. But at minus 1, y value is not minus 2. So we will put a circle here. Okay, I hope you got an idea. Between this region minus 2 and minus 1, f of x will have the value minus 2, but not at minus 1. So corresponding to minus 1, we will put a circle like this here, because at minus 1, y value is actually equal to minus 1. So that is why we are putting a circle here. So in this video, we have discussed about the greatest integer function, which is defined as f of x equal to x within the square bracket. I hope it is clear to you. Thank you.